And then without further ado, I want to introduce to you our presenter for this session, Meredith White, Spanish teacher and instructional technology specialist for high schools. Meredith White teaches Spanish and supports instructional technology at the high school level for Gwinnett County Public Schools in Metro Atlanta, Georgia. She was the 2019 Peachtree Ridge Teacher of the Year, the 2020 Georgia World Language Teacher of the Year, and the 2024 SCOLT Founders Award recipient. Welcome, Meredith.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm going to get everything arranged here. Thank you so much. Well, so as was just said, I'm just outside of New York, in Atlanta. So a little bit farther down here on the coast. Happy Monday in January, which I don't know about you guys, but my district, there's like that weird teacher 6-week gap between paydays. So I feel like January has 8,000 days. We are in the 67th day of January, I think, so far, because, oh my goodness. But it's Monday and I'm super excited to be here. I'm going to do one thing, only because, and I know like New York, it's never an issue, but I do talk quickly. So some people will say like, hold on, wait. So I like to turn on the captions in Google Slides. I will come out of the slides a little bit, but not right away. So we're going to talk about a couple of things here. As was said, this can be kind of as an instructional technology support person. So I teach Spanish 1. I teach technology in world languages at the university level. And I'm an instructional support person for my high school. And that can be sometimes a position where people assume that it's like all technology all the time. I am also a paper pencil like person, especially when it comes to assessments, things like that. We know about all the chat GPT. We know all the cheat. We know all the things. And that can be really frustrating. So this is sort of a juxtaposition presentation here because it's Google Slides, but to create and design paper documents because we know, that those work great and better than the technology many times. So for context, for my district, I am in Gwinnett County Public Schools. We are the 11th biggest in the country. So when I think context, I'm used to classes of 36, 38, just standing room only, no parapro, no aid, no nothing, just you and you're on your own, right? So if I mention that, my context is always that. And these will work for any level, middle school level, high school level, etc. This is just to make documents. And so I'm always thinking big classes, big district, big department. We have 142 schools in my district and 185,000 students. So it's a lot of people doing a lot of things a lot of the time. So that's my context. So let's get into it. The slides have been shared in the chat a couple of times. So feel free to use that link and I will pop it back in right now. What that allows you to see is kind of where we're going, but also feel free to save this and share it with colleagues. I make some little edits here and there, but pretty much nothing will change. And I also have some funny, what I think are funny memes, cartoons, whatever you want to call them, for about like Microsoft Word and how hard the formatting can be. I love Microsoft Word. I love Google Docs, but I swear sometimes you put in a picture and if you've been like me, all of a sudden, like this says, it's the most sensitive thing ever, right? You insert a picture, a volcano erupts, an alarm goes off. Like, yes, Timothy, it's truly like it does what it needs to do, I guess, for some people. I ain't those people. It's all of a sudden like on your second screen, flying around. There's no way to get that formatting back. It can be kind of a mess. And I added some more right after it just because they come up all the time. So we're not alone. If you're like, I am so tired of making quizzes or tests or whatever in Word and Docs, because what I end up doing is I go, fine, never mind then, right? And I just go Times New Roman 12, boring. But really, there's some power behind a little bit more intentional formatting, and it doesn't need to be that hard. these are some examples. So these are paper documents. These are my favorite unit templates. And I made these in Google Slides. So they just look like a normal paper document, right? Kids get these like printed out. We do these every unit, and I just change the content in there. So you'll see that bit.ly is a little bit different. And these should be, I can make them clickable. You can either type in the bit.ly for those documents. They're good for any language, any level. I just wanted you to see some examples of like the finished product that would be a PDF or a document that you send somebody and say, hey, what do you think of this quiz? That kind of thing. So these are some of my favorite examples. And I just throw them in to show kind of the formatting, the things you can still do with Google Slides that doesn't necessarily become obvious when you're trying to make documents. Hold on, my radio is going off. And we're going to turn those people off. Sorry, administrators, canceled. I forgot we're recording. Just kidding. I love my admins. But they're on the radio a lot. It's a lot going on. But we've also got standards and things that we need to be obviously working with and keeping in mind. And so I've got the New York standards here, which you guys are obviously super familiar with. So we're looking at the modes as well. Like what kind of, not just typing up a quiz or an assessment, just like, oh, I need 12 questions on passé composé or Sarah and a star or whatever, but really thinking about what it is that they're doing in those assessments and then formatting them accordingly. Obviously, as world language teachers, we know we need more stuff than other content areas sometimes need. We need audio, we need pictures sometimes, we need scaffolding, we need like little arrows, we need clues, whatever it is, photos, memes, screenshots from social media. We could be using a whole variety of different kinds of images, like kinds of media. And again, that's where Microsoft Word is a nightmare, as Timothy and I have come to the consensus on, because it's a mess. So same thing with Google Docs. It can just really be a mess. So keeping all these things in mind gets really tiring for me when I just want to make the freaking quiz. Like you're just in there and you're like, oh my gosh, or you forgot about it, right? Like we're all busy and it's like, when kids have, if you've ever had that moment of, they're like, hey, what's on the quiz tomorrow? I don't know. Let me make it first. Okay. Give me a second. So there's also those very like real life human moments of like, just study everything, just study everything because you're like, I don't know yet. I'm behind. For me, doing things in Google Slides because I can work faster to make assessments. I've made better ones if I'm just being super, super honest. They weren't real exciting before because I was like, rushing and frustrated. The other thing is we want them to do a variety of things with that variety. So, like I said, things that probably don't need to be reiterated, but I always like, hearing about what we need to be doing multiple times and looking at all the responsibilities that we have with students. Not just identifying or understanding things, but really like with language, thinking on a number of different levels about a bunch of different topics. So these were my goals right before COVID, because who could tell what was going to happen that year. The year before COVID, my goal was to align all of the assessments for my course team. So again, department of 14 people, course team meaning like everyone who teaches Spanish 1, everyone who teaches Spanish 2, French 1, etc. Course team of about 6 people, and everybody's busy. People have kids, families, pets, like whatever it is. It was really hard to get people together. And not only was it hard to get people together, but we have at the time, we had I mean, still do, but circumstances have changed and people have changed. But we had such a strong sharing culture that it was also hard to get all the documents in the same place for everyone to like know what other people are doing. What does your 3.1 quiz look like? What does your family unit test look like? Simple questions that became kind of complicated because everyone shares everything, everyone's got everything. So like, and Crescendo, you're the first name I can see on there. So like, let's say Crescendo and we teach Spanish 1 together. He might have something in his Google Drive that's like Marissa 2012 quiz 3.2. I'm like, who's Marissa? What are you talking about? If your Google Drive looks like ours did, I was like, who are these people? And it was like, oh, I taught with her at the middle school, and then we were over. Okay, well, and then I'm opening it up going, Marissa, I don't like this quiz. So it's also hard to delete stuff, right? It might belong to somebody else. So it's like in your Google Drive. So he might go, no, I really like that quiz. And then I'm saying, well, here's what I use. What do you think about this? Now we just have like, it's the Wild West in Google Drive, in OneDrive, in any of them. It is like bananas. And then people name stuff. If you've ever named something for yourself and then shared it with people, I had files called no, really, for copies, I mean it. This time I'm serious. It was like a cry for help, not a file name. So it was just a total mess. So what we did was we aligned all of our assessments, which forced us, I'm going to go back to these standards here, which forced us to look at these things, right? And we deleted and purged some of those files that we had that was like Marissa 2012, no, really, I mean it, right? That was the whole file name. It was bananas. So that was one of our goals because we also needed to be assessing in the same ways. The other, these are kind of like logistical goals that you can see here. But another major alignment one, I'm going to come back here, was we had people on our team that were nodding and smiling to a lot of these things, and a lot of these things, but then we're closing their door and doing their own thing. And now listen, we've all done it. There's no shame in that game. But that was their consistent practice for like every year, like every unit every year. So then what happens? We know kids, again, I'm at the high school level, I teach high school. Middle school's the same, elementary a little different, but in terms of middle and high, we know the children, and the children do not always tell the truth. Okay, am I right? So the kids will lie between levels. The kids will lie between teachers, right? They're like, oh, get Miss Bermudez. She's so nice. All we did was play games. We played Gimkit the whole time. Don't get Miss Schimmel. She's the worst. And she only gives tests. I know I had to make it the worst, Jill. Get Miss White. I don't know. She's kind of lazy. Like the kids lie on us all the time. And if you don't have a good relationship with your colleagues, like I start believing them. I'm like, well, maybe she's lazy, And I'm like, what'd they say about me? But it comes down to really, we had to know collegially and push each other what's really going on. Like, what are you actually putting on your assessment? What are you telling us you're putting on your assessment? And then what's really going on? Because all of those things, this again, seemingly simple goals to like get everything in Google Slides and it'd be the same. But really, the bigger goal was to purge some of those digital files that we no longer used, but also no longer served us. We had a lot of like only grammar out of context assessments that people were holding onto like their life depended on it. And that was really, really hard. So these were kind of like my goals selfishly, as I wanted everything in one place. I wanted stuff organized. But really, as a department, we really needed to get on the same page because that also then translated to our programs. And we were losing German and we were losing Chinese because kids were pinning languages against each other, right? Oh, get Miss Gomez for Chinese. She's great. She's super easy. Oh, I got 100. Oh, get Mr. So and so for German. He's super easy. Don't take Spanish. They're super hard. All they do is tests, right? Like we know the children. So this actually works towards those goals as well. The other thing that's nice is, again, Google Drive or OneDrive, any of those cloud, like where they live out in the ether, your files, you can change any of those names if you bookmark those files and it doesn't change the name of the file, like for the person. So let's say Crescendo, again, Crescendo and I are colleagues, and we are like, he's got Marissa 2012 quiz for copies. No, really, I mean it. Don't delete, right? He's got that long file that we've all seen, probably. If he changes, if I bookmark that quiz, I can name it whatever I want. So I don't have to change the file name and I don't even have to own the file. I can rename the bookmark. So these are my bookmarks. I took the screenshot and then I realized at the top it said Spanish 1 asses. And I was like, whoopsie doodle. Nope, that's supposed to say assessments. So I had to redo this. I had to redo the screenshot because that was not real profesh. Sorry, New York. So up at the top, this is my Chrome browser, and I've got all of my level 1 assessments, all of my level 1 slides. Then in a separate bookmark folder, all of my level 2 assessments, all of my level 2 slides. Is that not a thing of beauty? Now, it looks super micromanaged if it's like, oh, do you have to do that? That's just for me, because I also know myself. I'll be looking for that midterm and I'm like, oh, I know we gave one last year. Where is it? And again, the Wild West. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, wait, Anna made it. She shared it with me. She doesn't work here anymore. So she doesn't have a Google account. So it's lost. So we have to make it again. It's just a mess, right? If you don't have any of these issues, I'm super jealous. And can I come up and work with you guys? Because we just do. We have a lot of people. We also have a lot of technology, for better or for worse. So these are my bookmarks, and I just really easily wanted to be able to find stuff. And this has been so peaceful, is just to have everything. Now, these are printable. The unit slides are for displaying, clicking through, teaching, right? Direct instruction. And then the assessments folders are like click and print, click and print. Ooh, Crescendo, great question. Sort of loosely based on a textbook. We are in a weird, we just got a new textbook. So we had Realidades for a long time. Then we had Avancemos, and now we just switched to Senderos by Vista. So we just got a new contract with Vista. So the short answer is yes, but we have moved things all around to be super general. So it's instead like food unit, we put them in the order that made sense to us. So kind of like talking about yourself, talking about your school day, talking about people in your life and where you like to go about town, kind of those like average kind of set novice topics. And then we kind of sexied them up as we went through there. So my colleagues at other schools, they'll say, hey, what do you do for unit 5? I'm like, which one is unit 5? There is, I do have to ask. And they're like, what do you mean, which one is unit 5? I'm like, well, what do you call unit 5? Because we were also the only block schedule. So ours were, we had them for one semester and then moved on. Everyone else in my district pretty much is year long. But the short answer is yes. We took stuff, took all the same topics and took the same vocabulary and stuff, and then kind of customized it. So a couple of things that are important here. And if you want to, I just saw that you added the curriculum map. Sorry, I read too fast. If you want, we have like a scope and sequence. You can always, my website was in the first slide, but I'm going to stick it back in here too. It's got my email address on my CV. Feel free to shoot me an email because I have like a scope and sequence for like levels 1 through 5. And I also have a Georgia spreadsheet where it's got proficiency level expectations kind of by level, by language, which is nice because they vary a little bit. So if you want that too, I can send you anything. So you can kind of see like what we're looking at here. The other thing is in slides, you have some of the same formatting options. It's just thinking about them a little bit differently in terms of like paper. A lot of times we're doing them for a slide for like a presentation, right? But thinking about how you want things formatted like on paper. So the first one is in the slideshow itself, when you change the page setup in a slideshow, you can obviously change it for different like slide screen presentations, but you can make it for paper dimensions. So 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 8.5. The second one there under 2, and I will demonstrate all of this, don't worry, we'll make one together. The second one is in Word or in Docs, you just start typing and it just starts typing, right? In slides, you're going to have to insert something that you can type on. Now, keep in mind, text boxes are always going to be like square, and you can just insert a text box and start typing, no problem. Shapes are automatically a text box too. So there you go. If you've been putting shapes in slides, like you want a big circle and then you want text on top of it, you don't have to add a text box on top of the shape. It already is a text box. So that's kind of nice. That saves you a step. So instead of just typing on the slide, we'll insert a text box. And then the third part is kind of deciding some formatting. Adding audio, adding video, adding notes, adding links, different things like that. We'll add a little bit of each here in a sec. Marie, I can see you raise your hand. So if you are able to unmute, go ahead. Or I can see the chat if that's more comfortable too.
Yes, I have a question. Like the document you share with us that says your lesson and stuff, did you do that with slide?
Yes, yes.
How did you do that?
That's what I will show you. Are you ready?
And then the next question is, when I give my students work and then they do it on slide, I comment like Like when you use Google Doc and suggest stuff, correct stuff on it, with slide, it's impossible, for me at least.
Yeah, slides. So these are all, so I'm thinking like just paper printout. These are all for printing and not for like working on digitally. But in Google, you could do Google Classroom makes it a little bit easier if you have Google Classroom. In Google, you can also comment. It is a little hard though. Do every single one. Absolutely. Yeah. That gets a little bit tricky. I can show you how to do that too.
And in the paper one, you say you're gonna show.
Yeah. The paper, yes. So I'll show you I made the paper ones, and then on the paper ones, literally I just comment like just me writing on them. But it kind of depends on what you want. Oh, what? Hold on one second. Hold on, guys. What's up?
That's okay. I'll come back. I just want to see like that how it's looking.
Yeah. This is here. Okay, we're back. Woo, that was my principal. I was like, oh, that's important. What's happening? Because when she says stuff, we hop, right? I have an amazing principal. She's great. So yeah, so think about like what's easier for you. I'm, like I said, a paper document and like a unit document person. So just commenting like literally, like writing. But if you did have a digital option, or your students have Chromebooks or laptops or those kind of things, they can do like in Google Classroom, you could have the document, and you could have it to be able to comment back on that, or when they like duplicate it and submit it to you, all those kind of things. That could work as well. But again, I'm just thinking like just paper. Okay, Adina's ready. Well, let's do it then, Adina. So I'm going to open up a whole new slideshow. Here's a fun shortcut, slides.new. So if you have the Google suite of tools, so if you have like documents, the Google workspace, right? Docs, slides, notes, etc. Anytime you put .new anywhere, it's going to open a new blank, fresh one. So if you say docs.new and hit enter in Chrome, it's going to open up a blank Google Doc. If you do drawings.new, it's going to open up a blank Google Drawing. So I'm going to put slides.new and I'm going to hit enter. Yes, it's possible to download the slides for sure, because you have to once they're like a PDF, and then you want them to be like a savable document in your files. So that would be what you'd have to do there. So when I come up here on slides.new, whoops, let me get this out of the way here. Here's where this would be like your normal, oh, yay. Is that okay? Yeah, thank you. They will open up. I've never gotten visited this much. This is great. Thank you. I owe you. But we had some things for the baseball team. Welcome to school day, right? We're all used to this. So this is the default open, right? 16 by 9. And that first step I want to take is I want to, and I'm going to zoom. Let's see if I can. There we go. So I'm going to do file, and then here's page setup. So if you want to go step by step or just take it all in, totally up to you. Here's the default, widescreen, 16 by 9. We want to change to think of a sheet of paper. So instead of widescreen 16 by 9, I'm going to do custom, and then I'm going to do 8.5 by 11, because I want it to be vertical like these papers. Now I could do 11 by 8.5, and now it's this way. So 8.5 by 11, 11 by 8.5. I'm going to make sure it says inches. One time I said pixels, and it was like this big, and I posted it for students, and it was hilarious because it was super blurry, and I was like, what's the problem? Yeah, so pay attention, especially if you click on that and then click away and you're not looking. Pick inches. Rosanna, go ahead.
Once you apply that format, can you do it slide by slide, or does it apply to the entire thing?
It'll be the whole thing.
Okay.
Which is annoying. Docs, though, I can't help but wonder if they're going to change that soon, because in Docs, you can have all different, like you can have landscape, portrait, landscape, portrait. Surely that's got to be coming for slides, because that would be nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We did file, page setup, and then 8.5 by 11 inches. And then I hit apply. and it's still pretty zoomed in, but up here where it says zoom and it's got that percentage, you can always adjust that. Fit is nice, it's going to be a little small for our purposes here, but it just depends what you want to see, right? Don't be afraid to click around and find out, is what I always say. Just click a button, hit undo if it does something, right? No big deal. Now I'm going to title it too. I'm going to say New York State sample document. Okay. Again, we're thinking sheet of paper, not for a presentation. This is for printing. Here's where you get a little bit picky. So I'm going to pull this out over here so that we can see our slide. Okay. So here are the formatting decisions. This is the third part. Citing, sections, headers, etc. There's a little bit sometimes of an aesthetic choice, right? It's like walking into somebody's house and going, nah, I don't know if I would have put the couch there, right? That's a choice. Like you see people's documents sometimes and you go, oh, way too busy, or this is confusing. It's not busy enough, right? It's all kind of just based on what you want. I played around with all different things. And I also looked at what kind of questions my students were asking. We can make the best interpretive listening quiz in the world. But if we can't like pull up the audio, we can't find the file. Oh man, Stephanie was supposed to share it with me. Maureen had it and she did. I mean, all of these different things, then we can't do anything, right? 40 kids are just looking at you like, are we ready? Are we doing this quiz? So really thinking about questions that kids ask and what makes it easier when grading. So I like a header across the top that says all that. I'm going to go insert shape, and then I'm going to do a rectangle here. And something across the top there that says, notice I had to add the shape, then start typing. You can't just start typing on a slide. I'm going to say Spanish 1, Unit 1, Quiz 1. I'm going to change this. So all of the formatting things are the same in slides as they always are. Nothing there has changed, and the same as docs. So if you're unfamiliar with Google tools, again, click around and find out, right? Just open a blank document and start playing around, seeing what stuff does. I'm going to go left justification. And I also don't love that outline. So I'm going to make sure I've got my shape selected. I'm going to go pencil and then transparent. So all of this happened right here with insert shape. Okay. Now, across from there, that tells me what level, if I'm teaching multiple preps, which most of us are, Spanish 1, Unit 1, Quiz 1, I might give kids a spot for their name. And I like putting it in the target language, just so they're not then later still saying like, how do you say my name is? Dude, you see it every week, right? Like, or they put the Me Llamo S. I'm like, you've never seen that. So we gotta work with it, right? And then I just also don't love that font. Here's where I'm a snot. I'm a little bit of a font snot. I'm going to select that again, and I like Barlow. Barlow is one of my favorite, except for I hate this little outline. So anyway, there we go. So I like Barlow for headings. And when I realized I just didn't like some other fonts, I was like, maybe I just use the few that I like. And that's kind of what I've ended up doing. Again, what's nice is all my stuff looks the same, and I can tell kind of when I made it, like I deleted all the other copies and like now this is just what I work with. It's kind of like your wardrobe. Like if you realize, like if you pack for vacation, like you're going to do 3 costume changes a day, but you know you wear the same 6 outfits to work. Why do we do that? Like, why don't we just wear the same 6 outfits to work, right? We have our little cartoon character uniform, and that's just what I want to do. So I've done the same thing with my documents. Like I've gotten real with myself and been like, you know what? You stop trying to be fancy. Just do what you do. The other thing is I like to put the points, because what do kids automatically ask? How much is this? How much is each question? How many do I need to get an 80, et cetera, et cetera. I like to also say, 20 questions. I changed fonts on me again. Okay. 20 questions, 5 points each. Like whatever details that you feel like they're like raising their hand as you're walking around and asking you 1,000 times, right? And then from there, I'm going to format everything else with a text box. So I'm going to go here and say, let's say I have like 5 matching questions. I might put in a text box and just make some blanks and some numbers. Another fun little hack, we've had the slides.new. Anytime you're in Google Slides and you select something, Control D will duplicate that. So I don't have to try to then make the same text box size and the same spacing. I'm literally just going to click it and hit Control D. And so now I've got maybe some choices. Maybe I want them to see like a little Bitmoji or clip art or something and match it up, and match up like the letter with the number or something. Like, which one did you hear when I played number 1? That kind of a thing. And the bullet points up here, I can now change those to a letter. So the things that we're used to doing formatting wise, but just thinking about them kind of from scratch and without the margins. Look at this. I can do whatever I want. I'm living my best life. Come over here. Oops, I'm a little bit off the page. It doesn't care. Google Slides doesn't stop me from doing what I want. Microsoft Word would be like, what are you doing? And I'd straight to jail, right? I'd already be in jail with Microsoft Word or with Google Docs, because honestly, they're just the birds of, they're the same, right? So you can do that. Now, again, I mentioned audio. So thinking about audio and video and all the other things we need, we're also going to look now at the gray space and kind of how we can use that. Deborah, yes, you do. Okay, so when you go to print, perfect question. So when you go, let's say I want these centered, because again, I'm just a snot, and then I start getting like, you just go down a rabbit hole with your own like neuroses, and you're like, it must be this way. I'm going to center these, but let's say I didn't. Let's say I made these actually, like, let's say it's like this. I think this is what you're talking about. When it's like really close to the edge. When you do file and print, double check. We have PCs at work, but it looks pretty much similar on a Mac. This is gonna lie, okay? This is like a trifling X who you can't trust. Do not trust print preview. What you want here, because it'll say, oh, no problem, all the way to the edge, girl. No, not true. Under more settings, you want to do scale and then fit the printable area, because our copier also cuts off the sides if they're too close. Now, what it's going to do is like scoot those in a little bit, which is a little bit uglier, but definitely more functional. And then it won't cut off even more. You could also change the scale. If you hit fit to printable area, notice how it scooched it in a little bit. If you do that, if I go default, see, liar, default's a liar. If I go fit to printable area, it's scooted it in a little bit. I could honestly even just do, like, I could scale it. Let me remember where that lives. Oh, yeah, under scale. It's right now scaling at like 100%. I could do, you know what, mess with the kids. I don't know why that defaulted to 25 when I changed it, but let's mess with those children. Keep them on their toes. 25%. The quiz is this big. Do your best. No, but if I wanted to do like 90%, it still is weird. If I do like 80, no, it only scoots it in. So just kidding, ignore custom. I would stick with fit to printable area. I've never seen an issue with that. And that should kind of also like talk to your copier, but at least it gives you some literal wiggle room to kind of like, mess around the edges there. Isn't that annoying though? Yes, you're so welcome. Ours does that too. And so then you walk down the hall to check the original, and then you're like, go back to your computer, print it again. The things we go through. Yeah, for sure. I've got those. But again, what if I want more media? Let's say you have audio from your textbook, from just that you've recorded yourself, right? Like your colleague. Doesn't matter where the audio is coming from. If you can get it into your Google Drive, you can now insert it onto your slide. So like we said before, if you're playing it digitally, like if kids are getting a copy of the slide digitally, they would then have a copy of the audio. That might be a little tricky if you use the same audio year to year and class to class. And maybe like Christian and I don't give the quiz on the same day. So now his kids have an electronic copy, then my kids listen to it early, right? Because if you're like my students all talk to each other. So they're like, I heard the quiz was hard. It was like one period ago, right? So, or they've like, oh, I saw the cartoon. You've already seen part of the quiz. So if your kids talk kind of like that, like ours do, digital might be tricky with the audio. But as a teacher, from the logistical point of view, if I go insert and I do audio, if the audio's in my Google Drive already, either from my phone or from my email, and I've uploaded them into there, like in a unit folder, for example, now I can search anywhere in my files and it'll show me all of the unit, like all of the audio that I can insert. So now I don't have, if you've had this experience, you might be way more organized. But again, I'm a pretty organized person, and I've got like a lot of files and a lot of people and a lot of just things to like wrangle around, that I'm like, who sent that file? Who shared that file? Where do we have it? And also like, what did we call it? All of those things. So when you go insert audio and then do a search, if I do like unit 3, it's not showing me all files. It's showing me just audio, which I think is fabulous. So I'm going to click, let's say this is the one I want, and I would probably name them better than just like the unit, right? Give it a second, it'll say creating audio, and now you have it here on your slide. I'm going to move this. Now it's on your sheet of paper. We don't teach at Hogwarts, so the kids aren't going to be able to like magically like click on their sheet of paper. This is for you as a teacher reference. So at the bottom, when I drag this little guy up right here, like I drag it up to see the speaker notes, I'm going to give myself, whoops, that's because I'm too squished in here. There we go. Let me go full screen with my big monitor. There we go. I'm going to see a little bit of more of this gray space. I can drag this over here, and now it's just for me to click play on while students are working on their sheet of paper. So picturing logistically, whole class has their quiz, has their test, has their sheet of paper, and then off to the side, they've got the audio. I've got the audio that I'm at my computer that's projecting or playing in the speaker or whatever. And I'm like, okay, here we go. All in one tab. It's a silly thing to be a game changer. I tell you, such a game changer for us. Because again, you're like scrambling, and 40 kids are like, just like sitting there waiting. And then starts that weird vibe change where they start getting like, and it's just like, kids are kids, right? And you're like, can we just start the quiz? Or you can't find it, or you're kind of sweating, or you're not comfortable in Google Drive. And I don't like that feeling either. That can be really anxious too, where you're like, oh, I just had it and I just found it. It was just right here. I accidentally closed the tab or whatever. So like all of those things aren't just don't really always lead to peaceful teaching. And we want to be teaching peacefully. Like I want to feel calm, cool, collected as much as possible when teaching, and having everything in one place, super helpful for me for that. What happens is too, I can make this as big as I want. This doesn't have to be like the default size. So I can make like, ta-da, and then I can have it right here. And now maybe they're listening and I've said like question, 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 and then like, I don't know, answer choice based on the listening or whatever. And I have some instruction. Now I'm playing this, and because it's off to the side, it's not printing on the piece of paper. If you put it like right here, it will print on the piece of paper. Ask me how I know. Because again, it was like down the hallway to the printer, back to I just wasn't thinking about it. I was like, I don't think the audio would print. It does, spoiler. Now, if you want to make it a little smaller, here is something we do. I'm going to make it a little smaller here. And if I wanted to put this like up here and booty scooting these over, now maybe that's my indicator to students that it's a listening section. That I think is also really helpful. And I have several colleagues that do that also for your own memory, right? You're like running around, passing them out. You're like, okay, vamos a empezar. And then you're like, oh God, what is first? Like what section is first? Because teaching's hard. That can be a nice visual to go, that's right, the listening. Okay, got it. Let me hit play. And again, all I have to do is pull up the actual like file that has the quiz in it. Or I could just leave it off to the side, and that's fine too. If I've got several audios, here's the fun part for just logistics, but also differentiation is, let's say this is a page. This is page 1. So think slides as a page. If I do that same Control-D for duplicate, and I duplicate it here, what if I've got students that I want to give a little more support to? So maybe that's going to come in the form of like a word bank or something where some vocabulary suggestions. I can also do a formatting change here where I click the header and maybe I just make this a little bit darker. Those are pretty, I'm going to put them side by side here and zoom in. That's a pretty clear difference, right? Like between those two sheets of paper. But you can even be a little more subtle, and then it's not obvious to the kids. Because what is obvious is like, walk around, you're like, Adina, oh, no, you get the word bank. Christian, you don't get the, you know what I mean? And kids are like, word bank. And then pandemonium, right? I hope we've all been there. Because kids are not, they know exactly what's going on. They know what groups they're in. They know why they're in the groups they're in. All of the things that we do that are important aren't always like a mystery to them. So some really subtle formatting like that can be nice, where as you're passing them out, again, like, see, that's a little more subtle, isn't it? Yeah, like just barely different. And then you can be discreet as you're going around and, pulling from the stack and so on. The other thing is when you're grading them, like after you collect them, whatever, it's super easy to just eyeball the header and put them in different piles. So now you're like, okay, or if you have multiple sections in one class period, like we have honors, gifted, and college prep. Yes, those are all different. Don't ask me why. I don't know. In one class period. So if I'm like, oh, Olga, Christian, Alexandra, whatever, and I'm just looking at the top, it's really easy formatting to be able to tell like which one I'm grading in what way, right? Or if I've grouped them in some way, or if they're different levels in the same period, which again, many of us have. It's like the class's second period, but it's Spanish 2, Spanish 3, and Spanish 4, because maybe the program, scheduling doesn't allow for other class periods. So we have all these different situations. It can be nice just to have one document, but have all the multiple versions. Also, post-COVID, it's retake time. I mean, COVID teaching was like all the retakes in the world. And the only time that I philosophically get frustrated with retakes is when logistically it is like maddening, right? It's like you're handing students the quiz sometimes and they're like, are there retakes? I mean, the paper's like not even in their hand. Like, are there retakes? Yes, but hold on a second, right? Like let's take the take first. This isn't a preview of the retake. Like, let's hold on. So it can also be a great way to store retakes so that the darker the header, the later the version. So you don't have to make a whole new quiz that's a whole new document, because that was all of our retakes were also the whole new document, their own same like separate file. And then that's a nightmare to open them up next to each other. What's the difference? Whose file is this, etc. So I'm just thinking of complications that could arise. I've seen different formatting for that. Some people do like the shading. Some people will do like an outline around it just so they can see. Totally teacher preference. But besides audio, we can also here insert pictures. You can also do images, either just straight from Google where you search the web. You're going to get fewer results than you would just like in a tab, but they're usually a little bit more specific. A Google search is going to like give you everything random, but searching within insert images and search the web, that'll give you like more. See, like these are very specific, like New York. Otherwise, it comes up like everything New York. So if I just put in New York State, I'm going to put in this little map here. So I went insert, and where'd we go? Hold on. Sorry, image. And then you can upload from computer, totally great. Or what I did was search the web. Again, GIFs and stickers, fun, but if students aren't seeing it digitally, a GIF is not going to move around. So it's great, but for printing paper documents, kind of a little tricky. I'm going to click this one, the old US of A, and then there's New York. Sometimes if you have pulled an image and you've squished it, you know how sometimes you squish it super skinny and you're like, oh no, and then you squish it super flat and it's like all weird. On a PC, you can do Control-Alt-J to make it just a little bit smaller and it goes from the middle, or K to make it bigger. So I'll do that again. Control-Alt-J makes it smaller from the middle, but keeps its proportions. And K, Control-Alt-K, will make it bigger from the middle. So you can do a little bit speedy kind of formatting instead of all the like dragging the edges, which I'm just not very good at. So I like a shortcut because when I'm not good at things, I don't like that. So I want to just be good at things. So Control-Alt-J, I'm going to make that a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to use our fancy pantsy Control-T to duplicate, because maybe I also want the same formatting here. Oh, I did these in the wrong order. The gray space is great because you can also just set stuff there for a second. If you go, oh, I need to move this around. It's there. It's like a desktop. It's like a workspace. Canva, if you've ever done that in Canva, if you like Canva, Canva, once you move it off to the side, gone forever. Have you ever seen it? Just like disappears, poof, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm not using that text box. But Google Slides, you can put them anywhere you want. So all I'm doing is just moving these around and realizing, oh, okay, now, look at this image and tell me about whatever. Pretend like this is something applicable to your language, to your level, etc. I could also take this away and just stretch this text box and then make these just a bunch of lines, right? And now it's like a short answer question. You have to finagle the formatting a little bit, but you can still do the same things. And again, look, Ma, no margins, super exciting. You can just just sloppy. What will we even do with that? Doesn't matter because we can do it. We can do whatever we want. Just a document Rebel's Paradise here in Google Slides. I'm going to move this up just because visually I find that a little bit hard, but pretend like this is a question. There's some instructions, blah, 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 right? All of those things. Look how easily that moved around. Word could never. Word, you'd already be crying by now. I would already be crying by now. And Word would just be like, because it just is difficult for no reason. Again, this is a page. So at some point, if I'm like, I'm going to delete that second page, I actually want to duplicate this one. Look how much easier that is rather than like selecting everything below, delete, backspace. You're on a column now. It's like super weird. So it's easy to update. And then it's easy to rename too without renaming the whole file. And then you've still got other like remnants of that same file that are like hiding. And you're like, I thought I deleted that one. It's like one and done. Now, one thing that I'll show you from a sample here, and I'm going to come back here and make this bigger so you can see it, is this is an example, and this is clickable. If you click this image on, I can't tell, slide 14, this is an example of our Spanish 1, Unit 1, Quiz 2. Our second quiz is always listening. So Quiz 1, always reading. Quiz 2, always listening. And then the tests have all those performance aspects that we've been doing. So speaking and writing, plus listening and reading. But when you click on this, it's Quiz 2, so we know it's listening. Look at that beautiful gray space. Do you remember those baked bean commercials where he'd say, roll that beautiful bean footage? That's what I feel like. Look at, roll that green space, that gray space footage. So these are notes to myself or to my team, whatever, right? Notes from last year. If you want like a bank of emojis, because maybe, you're going to use them for formatting throughout there. We also, because we're all human, might have recorded the audio wrong once, and we forgot time because a unit 1 in like a level 1 is always, again, the Wild West. Just really hard to tell, like it's colors, it's numbers, random, it's introductions, it's greetings, it's your birthday, like it's just weird. So we forgot to add time, so we have an audio with time, which is what we were supposed to do, and then we have a less detailed audio without time. Turns out it's great for retakes or like scaffolding, support, all of those things. But notice that I can have 8 separate audio files off to the side here. And I'm not like opening up all these other tabs, trying to find the audio. And all I have to do is click on them or hover and they play. You might not be able to hear that because I didn't turn on audio when I started sharing, but there's all the audio for each of those weather broadcasts. This quiz for students goes by column. The first audio, they're listening for where, what day is today, what's the date, what kind of weather is it, and then what's specifically the temperature outside. So they're going 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 columns, 4 audios. And they go in order left to right, if that helps. And then if we want to use some formatting things, like I said, emojis. Before the quiz, we did a movie talk. I love a movie talk. So I just played that weather video muted, again, thinking interpretively and authentic because it's somebody's actual random terrible weather collage, that you're just going through going, ¿hace sol o está nevando? ¿Está lloviendo o hay tormenta? Whatever. You're doing all those kind of leveled questioning things. But I wouldn't remember that. Next year I wouldn't go, yes. Unit 1, Quiz 2, it was a Tuesday. I remember, no. Like, I'm lucky if I remember my lunch, okay? So having as many notes to myself in the margins, for me, is really helpful. I also know that I will buy every pretty notebook on the planet, and I will, like, write super good notes, and then I will forget that those notes even existed till next year. Like, you sit down and pre-planning, you're like, it's going to be another great year. Where is all my stuff? So having the notes directly like from past me to future me right there on the format, or to colleagues, hey, by the way, there was a typo, I fixed it, or whatever, super, super helpful. I had somebody who changed the reason, like a note like this, for example, my colleague Hannah changed them all to Spanish. She was like, oh, this must be an error. So we had to add the note terms in English are on purpose, because she thought it was easier in English, but then in Spanish, it just turned into like a hearing test, right? There's listening comprehension, and then there's a hearing test. So all they had to hear was hace sol, and they were like, oh, hace sol, and just checked off the box. There was no listening comprehension. They just heard words that sounded like those other words. So I'm going to share this with you as well. And then you can see that page 2, I know it's in the slides, but I'll put it in there just for funsies, because why not, right? Second page there, I obviously wouldn't be projecting this because the second page is the answer key. So what I like to do also is just like insert another slide. If I do happen to have my computer open and I am projecting, I just put a bunch of like blank slides between the first page and the answer key, and then kids can't see it, right? Or again, I'm thinking class of almost 40. If I have a student at my desk who's clicking play on the audio, I don't want them to see the answer key either, because all the other kids in the class automatically go, that's not fair. Adina can see the answers. She can't see the answers. She can't see anything. And if she could, she probably didn't notice until now you've yelled it out. So they're always like looking for, somebody who has an advantage. So if you do have the answer key, you could just temporarily put blank slides in there and just be done with it, right? I'm going to delete those. But feel free, if you like that as an example, or heck, if you like it as a quiz, go for it, right? No problem. Everything shared, please take, steal, edit, make better, send back, do whatever you want to do. Especially for 1 and 2, because those are my favorites. And the ones that I have the most stuff for. I already told you the .new. So the last thing I want to show you here is if you want to see all of this in context, and if you know a Spanish teacher, and the only reason I say Spanish is because this is Spanish 1 specifically, that you can share this with, especially a new teacher, feel free. This is my entire Spanish 1 folder, and this has all of the documents that we made in context. Notice the labeling, and then it's also got the presentation slides for teaching, right? Every single day, warm up, exit card, from beginning to end, 90 minutes. So a couple of things in Google Drive. In the upper right-hand corner, when you're looking at files, you always have the ability in folders to have a list layout, or you see that kind of Lego looking blocky one. That one will actually show you a thumbnail of each file. It depends on what you want. Sometimes the grid is the default and the list can feel more peaceful if you're like, oh, what am I looking at? Or sometimes the opposite's true. Sometimes the list can be a little bland and you're like, what am I looking at? But then you see visually something that you see in the thumbnail and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I know what file I'm looking at. Just depends on what you want. You'll see this goes daily slides, quiz, test. Daily slides, quiz, test. And that's how each unit goes. Now, in making those documents, it was also our goal to get to where our grade books were aligned. Because again, we know sometimes the young people don't always tell the truth, and they would be pinning languages and levels against each other, right? They want to do everything they can, if they can. And so that was also helped by the labeling and the organizing, because now everyone has the same gradebook setup. Unit 1, you've got your classwork, and then you've got quiz, test. Unit 2, you've got your classwork, and then you've got quiz, test. And we had the same amounts of the same types of assessments. And it was a lot easier that way to tell kids, hey, you're getting the same experience. Our personalities are always going to be different, but being able to tell kids like, it's the same. Your teacher's not terrible and her teacher's not amazing, and vice versa. Like everyone, it's fine, right? And I know for a fact, because I know what your teacher is assessing on, because we have the same assessments. So this was the final product that year. The whole year we went assessment by assessment and just got it together. And then that was it. There were no other versions. There were no other, no other anything really to be able to mess with it. Okay, so we've got that folder. I want to open up one more thing that may be helpful. Oops, hold on one second. I hid you there. And that's going to be in our last couple of minutes here. I love a bit.ly, you can tell. It's easier to remember. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. And if you're interested in that sequencing, because like I said, it looks like we're talking about Google Slides for paper documents, and we are, but there really is so much more to it. It comes down to digital files. It comes down to, peaceful teaching. It gets, all of those different things. So one of them is that gradebook structure, and this is it. So if this is helpful in your department or your school, your situation, because you feel like maybe some of those things are happening, or you just want to get everybody on the same page. We happen to have several new teachers, and it was really nice because they were like, what do I grade? What am I looking at? What am I doing? Right? If you've been a first-year teacher, especially a super young first-year teacher, I started 2 days after I graduated college. Don't recommend, 0 stars. Then it was hard, and I didn't have any resources. So I wanted somebody to tell me, like, here's what to do, here's what to give, here's how many. But this was that structure. You saw that it was quiz, test. That could easily be an IPA, a project, just revisiting a proficiency check-in, like any of those things are totally fine. And then the classwork were like whatever you wanted to call them, whatever you wanted them to be. And that's how each of our units were. This was across languages and across levels, meaning French 4, same. AP German, same. Spanish 1, same. Chinese 3, same. Like everybody had the same amounts of the same kinds of things, and they weighed the same. So it was really, really nice to kind of bring all those pieces together. And that Spanish 1 folder reflects that. So you can see that's how we, like, here's 3 weeks worth of slides. And then within that, quiz test, quiz test, etc. What did I miss? Is there anything else I can add that was fast and furious, but you have all of these examples, and you have lots of other goodies in there and additional things. Anything that I can show in our last couple minutes, or anything that I missed or might have just gone over too quickly?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way, so I have a personal Gmail and then I also have my school's account. So let's say I'd like to copy an entire presentation between accounts. Yeah. Is that possible?
It is. What I have to think about a lot of times is, so a lot of my files, actually probably almost all of my files, have me, like both accounts on the file as an editor. Once in a while, I'll transfer ownership, which is tricky because I'll open up like a slideshow and I'll start making it, and I'll get into making it like to help a colleague or for something. And then I realize, God, I'm using my personal and not my school one. So I'll add my school one on as an editor, then add as an owner once that's all done. If your organization's like mine, like my district as a Google, like as a, workspace, there will be a little message that pops up that says like, oh, it's not recommended. But I've never had any issue like adding my personal Gmail onto like the school stuff. It just kind of depends what you want. But you can add them on both. I think is the easiest way, is just to like make an editor and then make the owner, and then like the other account you delete yourself.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's weird. Google's funny, and like Google what you can do at school is weird. So all of it's hard. And I'm always like, I like get a workaround, and then I'm like, is this allowed? Like, is my boss gonna yell at me? Hope not. Let's stick that slides link in there one more time. Boop, boop. There we go. And all the links are in there too. Yay, you're welcome.
I have a question, actually.
Yeah, go ahead, Britta.
Sounds like you've used Canva and all the others, because, they give you so many suggestions, and I'm just wondering. Canva person told me, oh, Canva's the best, but you seem like a Google fan. I use Google already. I don't want to hop around and try 50 million things like you. I want to do it well. You seem like
same.
Google's your go-to, right?
Yeah, it is. And I love Canva because I do my school social media too, which is like, always like kind of, terrifying. You're like, is this ugly? Is this like easy to post places, whatever. So I do like Canva for a lot of things, but like sharing, I find way easier in Google. And like the stuff that, like you said, you're already good at one. So you're like, I already know what I'm doing. I know there's enough stuff that you can make good. There's enough Google templates that people share for free that I'm like, oh, this is just like a Canva. All I have to do is copy the file over. If you haven't used Google Drawings, little trick here, and this is not super applicable to like documents, but it's just like another little Google trick. If you've never used Google Drawings, drawings.new will take you there. It's like docs.new, slides.new, etc. And it's almost like a blank, like you get like a Canva, but without all the confusing, like add an element, add a picture, pick a template. What do you want? All those kind of things. It's the Google you already know and love. From there, you can do like insert images, you can do all the shape stuff. And a little like tip is in every Google URL, well, you can also download as an image way faster than you can in Canva. But in every link to every Google everything, if the end says edit, you can change that to copy. And so I changed edit to copy after the slash. Now it forces people to make a copy of it. If you've ever gotten that link and you're like, how did they do that? How did they make me make a copy? That's how they did that. The other thing that you can do with Google Drawings so much faster than you can Canva is don't make edit copy, make it preview. And now it's going to be, I should have put something on there first. It's like hopefully it's color. I'm going to put a random shape here. Wait for it. You can do it, Google. We believe in you. Okay. Random, literally, boop, boop. There we go. And now I'm going to do everything after the slash. Preview. Works in slides too. And now there you go. I could download it as an image. I could just send it to somebody and it doesn't have that checkered, like transparent thing. It's just so much faster than Canva. So honestly, yeah, I like Canva, but it's not my go-to. There's some pretty sexy things you can do in Google. I'm going to add one Jacob. I think this is his handle on Instagram, but I'm not positive. But find Jacob_PowerPoint on Instagram. He does amazing things with PowerPoint and Google Slides that look way better than Canva. So highly recommend.
Thanks so much. I was just
Yeah,
looking for my
absolutely. In Google, I'm with them.
But you mentioned that before. You're like, I have trying all these outfits. I know what I need to wear to work. It's the same thing with this. It's like, let's just stick to a few things that we're good at.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm going to move this to trash so I don't later go, what the heck was this?
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you so much, Mrs. Meredith White. Can we maybe turn on our cameras and give a round of applause and mute ourselves?
Thanks.
Thank you so much for being part of today's conference.
Thank you.
I learned so many tips that I'm already going to start putting in action. So we really thank you. Thank you for your time. And if you guys want to unmute yourselves and say gracias, thank you.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Gracias.
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 Merci beaucoup.
Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias.
De nada, de nada.
Merci.
Gracias.
You won
Yay.
the prize for most memorable quote about preview being like an ex that you can't trust.
Don't trust it. Prep preview, liar, toxic. Don't do it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. We've put the attendance in the chat a few times. Thank you so much, Olga, for keeping us on time. And with all these links, we have the attendance in the chat. We have the code. We also have a Padlet link in the chat. Please log in to both. We would really love to hear your feedback, your insights, like what you learned, any questions. Anything that came up for you in this session, please add it onto the Padlet. And also, please take some time to complete your attendance. There's also an attendance code that was shared in the chat. Maybe you want to just jot that down very quickly. so that you have that number, those numbers, that code in case you log off before you complete the attendance. I'm going to leave the Zoom open for a few more minutes should you have any questions. But it was amazing spending today with you all. Have a great day. We put the code once more in the chat in case you need it. Thank you so much, Olga. It was awesome working with you today.
You too. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
You too.
Bye.
Bye, Miss Sierra. Bye-bye.